Okay, algebra folks, this is Unit 9, Notes 2, talking about monomial and factoring review. So the big idea here is simplifying monomials and factoring expressions. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So a couple rules to remember. First off, product of a power. Product, of course, means multiply. So if I have like a to the fifth times a to the sixth, that's where I add the exponent, so I'm going to have a to the 11th. So if I take, so that's kind of what you're talking about here, is what you're going, when you multiply things, you add the power. So add the power. So if I have x to the fourth times x to the third, that should be x to the seventh. Now, power of a power, this is where I multiply the exponent. So if I have a to the third, but that whole thing is raised to the fourth, well, I'm going to multiply 3 times 4, so my answer is going to be a to the 12th. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. So if I have y squared raised to the fourth, 4 times 2 is 8, so that's going to be y to the 8th. There's my answer. So zero power is very, very simple. Basically, anything raised to the power of 0 is 1. So if I have a to the 0 power, that's 1. So if I have 47 raised to the 0 power, that's 1. Quotient of a power is where I divide. So I have y to the 7th over y to the 4th. So this is, I'm going to subtract 7 minus 4. So y is going to be to y to the 3rd. So if you're going to take a quotient, basically if you're going to divide, you have to subtract exponents. But what you have to remember, though, is this, is that if I've got y to the 3rd over y to the 5th, and I subtract 3 minus 5, I get negative 2 for an answer. So that means it's going to be 1 over y squared. Notice it's positive in the denominator. So here, simplifying the expressions means putting things together. So what I'm looking at is this. This 4 doesn't go with anything. But x is like x to the 1 times x squared y cubed. So here I'm multiplying, so I add the exponents. So that's going to be 4x to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. A lot of kids like to screw that up. Number 2, anything raised to a power, I don't care how big it is always going to be 1. Here, for number 3, I've got to take everything raised to that power. But before I do that, I want to combine things in here first. So I'm keeping the 6. This y in the y to the 4th, that's like y to the 1st and y to the 4th becomes y to the 5th. X to the 3rd and x becomes x to the 4th squared. So now I take everything raised to the power. So 6 squared is going to be 36. 5 times 2 is going to be y to the 10th. X times 4 to the 2nd is going to be x to the 8th. Notice, I multiply 5 times 2, 4 times 2 to get my answer. For number 4, here and here, I multiply numbers, add exponents. So multiply numbers, add exponents. So it's going to be negative 28, a to the 3rd, b to the 9th. So simplifying here, pretty straightforward. A over a cancels out. That's like saying a to the 1st over a to the 1st. 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything to a 0 power is 1. So that does me no good. I'm left with 4b, and that's it. Technically, it could be 4b times 1, but that doesn't help me. For number 6, divide the number. I don't know how many people would look at number 6 and somehow I would get 12 in the answer. That's certainly not right. Divide this. Okay, so 12 isn't right. So divide. 16 divided by 4 is going to be 4. 5 minus 6 for the x's. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. So that means it's going to go in the denominator. So x to the 1st are just x. The y's, y to the 7th over y to the 4th, that's going to be 7 minus 4, which is going to be 3. So that's going to be 4y3 over x. There's my answer. So factoring expressions. So factoring expressions goes like this. Step 1. Rule number 1 of factoring. Is there anything in common? 2, set up the x, solve the x, factor by grouping. So these are the ways you've seen factoring before. We've done it for other things. So number 1, I can't factor, there's no GCF. So draw my box. What multiplies to 6, what adds up to 6 multiplies to 5? Well, that's got to be 5 and 1. So if there's nothing in front of the x squared, which is true in this case, then my answers are just the factors. So x plus 5, sorry, this is a terrible 5, and x plus 1. Here, number 2, what's in common? Well, there's a 3 in both of those, and there's an x in both of those, so I'll be left with x minus 5. There's my answer. First rule of factoring, factor out the GCF. When there's something in front of x squared, this is where I multiply first times last. So what multiplies, or what adds up to 7 but multiplies to 6? Well, 6 and 1. But I cannot just put x plus 6, x plus 1. That's going to be wrong. I can't do that. This is where I need to rewrite the middle term, 3x squared plus 6x plus x plus 2. Rewrite 7x using my factors. So this is like 1x right here. So parenthesis, 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 parenthesis. What's in common? 3x. I'm left with x plus 2. Over here, nothing's in common, so I'm left with just x plus 2. So my factors are going to be 3x plus 1 times x plus 2. There's my answer. For number 4, x squared minus 49, this is like having a middle term of 0. There's kind of one way to think about it. If you're clever enough to recognize it's a difference of 2 squares, here's what happens. What adds up to 0 but multiplies to negative 49? Well, 7 and negative 7. So my answer will just be x plus 7, x minus 7. So factoring the expressions again. So here, what multiplies to negative 35 adds up to 2? Well, that's going to be 7 and negative 5. So that's going to be x plus 7, x minus 5. There's my answer. For 6, again, multiply here. So that's going to be multiplies to negative 6, adds up to negative 5. So negative 6, I'm going to go with negative 6 and positive 1. So that's negative 6, positive 1. So I'm going to rewrite that as 2x squared minus 6x plus x minus 3. So, there we go. And now, so that's a 3, parenthesis, 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 parenthesis. So pull out 2x, you're left with x minus 3, plus an x minus 3. So this is like saying 2x plus 1, because there's like a 1 in front of this, and times x minus 3. So rewriting this, 2x plus 1, x minus 3. There's my answer. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you for playing. Hopefully this is a review for you. Come talk to me and get questions answered.